Listen closely, not for motivation, not for hope, but for a warning. Because somewhere between who you are and who you were supposed to become, something went wrong. And it wasn't the economy. It wasn't your parents. It wasn't bad luck. It was a quiet decision you don't remember making. There is a version of you that profits from your delay, a version that feeds on hesitation, a version that survives by keeping you comfortable enough to never revolt. He doesn't scream. He doesn't sabotage loudly. He whispers, later. Be realistic. Don't risk it yet. Play it safe. And every time you listen, money moves away from you. That's the part nobody tells you. Money is not attracted to effort. It is not impressed by struggle. It does not reward good intentions. Money flows toward behavior, cold behavior, predictable behavior, often ruthless behavior. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. It should, because the moment you realize this, you stop asking why you're stuck and start asking who you've been obedient to. Let me say something most motivational channels are too scared to say. The world is not designed to reward fairness. It is designed to reward leverage. The man who hesitates loses to the man who acts first. The man who seeks approval loses to the man who claims authority. The man who waits to be chosen loses to the man who decides. And the brutal part? Both men work hard. Both men feel fear. Both men wake up tired. But only one understands the game being played. This is where most people emotionally shut down. They hear this and think, so you're saying I have to become heartless? No, you have to become precise. There is a difference. Heartless people burn bridges accidentally. Ruthless people burn bridges strategically. Heartless people destroy without direction. Ruthless people remove obstacles without apology. And history favors the second man every time. 500 years ago, one man wrote this down so clearly that kings feared it, churches condemned it, and polite society pretended it didn't exist. Not because it was false, but because it was accurate. He observed power the way a surgeon observes anatomy. No judgment, no moral decoration, just function. And what he noticed was terrifyingly simple. Those who win do not ask permission from the world. They extract what the world responds to. And money. Money responds to clarity, dominance, and decisiveness. Not kindness, not patience, not potential. Here's the uncomfortable truth that separates men from wealthy ones. Most men don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they refuse to shed identities. They want success without social friction, wealth without tension, power without enemies. But every step up the hierarchy creates resistance, and the man inside you, the obedient one, is terrified of that resistance. He would rather you stay small and liked than decisive and resented. So he keeps you busy, he keeps you learning, he keeps you preparing. Preparation feels productive, but it produces nothing. And while you prepare, someone more ruthless moves. This is where the fork in the road appears. One path is familiar, safe, predictable. The other feels dangerous, lonely, exposed. And most men choose the first path not because it's better, but because it hurts less today. They trade future authority for present comfort, and money notices that trade immediately. Because money does not go where you hope. It goes where you commit. In the next part, I'm going to show you exactly why ruthless men seem to win effortlessly, why moral hesitation keeps you financially weak, and why the system quietly rewards those willing to act without consensus. This is the moment most people click away, because understanding this forces you to confront who you've been protecting and who you've been betraying. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Before we talk about money, we need to talk about something far more dangerous: fear disguised as morality. Most men believe they are being ethical when in reality they are being afraid. They tell themselves stories like, "I don't want to step on anyone. I don't want to look aggressive. I don't want to be that guy." But listen carefully. Those sentences are not principles. They are permissions to stay weak. Because the world does not punish you for being ruthless. It punishes you for being unclear. And this is where Machiavelli becomes radioactive. Not because he promoted cruelty, but because he exposed a truth most people refuse to face. Power is never granted to the most deserving man. It is claimed by the most decisive one. Here's the uncomfortable observation Machiavelli made while watching princes rise and fall. The same action that looks evil when performed by a nobody is called leadership when performed by a man with authority. The difference isn't the action, it's the position. And position is not earned by waiting your turn. It's taken. Think about this. Every wealthy man you admire made at least one move that offended someone. He undercut a competitor. He fired people who liked him. He said no when others begged for yes. He walked away while others pleaded. And each of those moments felt brutal in the moment. But here's what nobody tells you. Those moments were not acts of cruelty. They were acts of selection. Selection of direction. Selection of priority. Selection of outcome. And money followed that clarity like gravity. Most men never reach wealth because they are addicted to being understood. They want everyone to agree with them before they move. But consensus is the enemy of momentum. The market does not wait for agreement. Opportunity does not pause for validation. And money especially does not reward hesitation dressed up as politeness. Machiavelli warned rulers about this exact trap. He observed that leaders who tried to please everyone were eventually crushed by those who chose a side. Why? Because neutrality reads as weakness. Indecision invites challenge. And kindness without boundaries signals availability for exploitation. This is not pessimism. This is pattern recognition. Here's the part that should make you uneasy. Right now, somewhere near you, there is a man less intelligent than you, less disciplined than you, less ethical than you, who will out-earn you, not because he's better, but because when faced with discomfort, he moves, and when faced with fear, he acts anyway. While you pause to consider consequences, he captures territory. And the territory isn't always physical. It's attention, it's leverage, it's positioning. He speaks first, he prices higher, he walks away faster, he understands something most people don't. Every hesitation creates an opening, and openings get filled. If not by you, by someone else. This is where the obedient man inside you panics, because obedience loves rules, and ruthless behavior often bends them, not illegally, but unapologetically, and that scares you, because it means responsibility shifts from the system to you. No one to blame, no authority to hide behind, just outcomes. Let me make this painfully clear. Money does not hate good men. It ignores harmless ones. Harmless men are predictable. Predictable men are controllable. And controllable men are replaceable. Ruthless men are not violent. They are unignorable. They do not ask, "Is this allowed?" They ask, "What happens if I do this?" And then they decide if the outcome is worth the backlash. Most men never ask that question. They self-censor before reality ever does. Machiavelli called this mistake fatal, because once people sense you won't enforce your boundaries, they will test them endlessly in business, in negotiations, in money, and every test you fail pushes wealth further away from you. Now, here's the twist most people miss. Ruthlessness does not mean constant aggression. In fact, the most effective ruthless men are often calm, quiet, almost invisible. They don't explode. They remove. They remove access. They remove discounts. They remove explanations. And the silence does the damage. In the next part, I'm going to show you the exact psychological shift that separates men who stay stuck forever from men who suddenly experience financial acceleration. This is the moment where excuses collapse. Because once you see how obedience is trained into you, you'll realize you were never unlucky. You were conditioned, and conditioning can be broken. You were trained to lose before you ever tried to win. And the training worked. From the moment you were young, you were taught a dangerous equation. Obedience equals safety. Compliance equals stability. Patience equals reward. But here's the flaw nobody warned you about. Those rules were designed for systems that need order, not for individuals who want power. And money. Money lives on the other side of that divide. Think back to every authority figure in your life. Teachers rewarded quiet compliance. Managers praised reliability. Society celebrated humility and patience. But none of them ever taught you how leverage actually works, because leverage is disruptive. And systems don't promote people who disrupt them. They promote people who maintain them. So if you followed the rules perfectly, congratulations, you became useful, not powerful. This is where most men feel a sting of anger, because they realize something too late. They weren't failing. They were succeeding at the wrong objective. They became dependable employees, predictable consumers, low-risk personalities, and then they wondered why money never arrived. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He noticed that societies don't elevate men who wait their turn. They elevate men who change the order of turns. And here's the brutal truth. The world does not reward fairness. It rewards results. And results rarely come from permission. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many ideas have you delayed because you weren't ready yet? How many opportunities did you pass because you didn't want to look foolish? How many times did you lower your price, your standards, your ambition, just to avoid tension? Each one of those moments felt small, harmless, but added together they formed an identity. The identity of a man who waits while others move. And here's the part that stings the most. Nobody forced that identity on you. You chose it, not consciously, not proudly, but repeatedly. Every time you chose comfort over confrontation, certainty over courage, approval over authority, and money noticed, because money tracks behavior patterns, not intentions. This is why motivation doesn't work long term. Motivation pumps you up, then drops you back into the same obedience loop. You don't need hype. You need reprogramming. You need to unlearn the reflex to ask permission, because asking permission places power outside yourself, and wealth only flows to those who act as if they are already responsible for outcomes. Machiavelli understood something modern self-help avoids. People don't rise because they are good. They rise because they are effective. Effectiveness doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about timing, positioning, execution, and the men who master these often look cold to those who don't. Here's where the obedient man inside you starts bargaining. He says, "Can't I be successful and liked? Can I win without conflict? Can I wait until conditions improve?" And sometimes the answer is yes, but usually no, because progress creates friction by default. And if you avoid friction, you avoid movement. Let me be very clear. Ruthless men are not fearless. They feel fear deeply. The difference is simple and devastating. They do not negotiate with fear. They acknowledge it, measure the cost, then move anyway. While obedient men seek reassurance, ruthless men seek position, and position compounds. This is why wealth often looks sudden from the outside. People say, he got lucky. He blew up overnight. No, they just didn't see the years of silent boundary setting, the decisions made without applause, the moments where someone said, "That's too much," and he replied, "Then it's not for you," and kept going. Here's the line that changes everything. If you need consensus to act, you will always be late, and in money, late is fatal. In the next part, I'm going to break down exactly how ruthless men think differently when making decisions about money, risk, and timing. You'll see why they move faster, why they recover quicker, and why once momentum starts, it becomes almost impossible to stop. This is where the obedient identity begins to crack. And when it does, there's no going back. The ruthless don't see risk the way you do. And that single difference changes everything. Most men believe risk is something to be avoided. They see it as danger, loss, failure. Ruthless men see risk as information, and this is where wealth begins to accelerate. When an obedient man faces a decision, his mind asks one question: what could go wrong? And then it freezes. But when a ruthless man faces the same decision, he asks something far more useful. What happens if this works? That question shifts the entire frame, because one mindset focuses on protection, the other focuses on expansion, and money follows expansion every time. Machiavelli warned leaders about this exact divide. He observed that rulers who obsessed over avoiding mistakes were eventually overtaken by those willing to act imperfectly. Why? Because inaction is also a decision, and it's usually the worst one. Think about how most people plan their lives. They look for certainty before moving. They wait for guarantees. They demand safety nets. But certainty is an illusion created after success, not before it. Ruthless men move first, then they create stability around their position. Obedient men wait for stability, then wonder why the position is already taken. This is why opportunity feels scarce to most people, because they arrive after the door has closed, not because the door was locked, but because they hesitated while others walked through. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Risk does not decrease with time. It compounds. The longer you wait, the more crowded the field becomes. The more competition you face, the less leverage you have. And money notices that shrinking leverage instantly. Ruthless men understand something critical. The biggest risk is not failure, it's irrelevance. Failure teaches, irrelevance erases. A man who fails loudly is still visible. A man who waits quietly disappears. This is why ruthless men often take bold positions early. They speak before they're experts. They charge before they feel ready. They launch before everything is perfect. Not because they're reckless, but because they know something you were never taught. Momentum forgives mistakes. Stagnation does not. The obedient man inside you hates this, because he was trained to avoid embarrassment at all costs. He was told that looking foolish is worse than being stuck. But ruthless men know better. Embarrassment fades. Missed timing does not. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the bold. But people misunderstand that phrase. Bold does not mean loud. It means decisive. It means acting when others are still analyzing. It means placing yourself in motion before certainty arrives. Let me give you a brutal metric. If your decisions feel comfortable, they are probably too late. If your moves don't create tension, they aren't ambitious enough. And if nobody is reacting to your actions, you are not playing at a level that attracts money. Here's where the internal conflict peaks, because the obedient version of you says, "But what if I lose?" And the ruthless answer is calm and precise. "Then I'll learn faster than those who didn't play." Loss is temporary, lessons compound. But waiting? Waiting costs you years. This is why money often seems to flow to certain men. It's not luck, it's speed. Speed of decision, speed of execution, speed of recovery. And speed is built by choosing action over comfort again and again. In the next part, I'm going to show you how ruthless men use boundaries as weapons, and why saying no more often is one of the fastest ways to increase your income. This is where people start calling you cold, which is exactly when things start working. The fastest way to lose money is to be too available. Most men think availability is a virtue. They answer every message. They say yes to every request. They explain every decision. And they wonder why nobody takes them seriously. Ruthless men do the opposite. They disappear. They delay. They restrict access, and the value rises. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. He observed that power weakens when it becomes familiar. The more people can reach you, the less they respect you, not because they dislike you, but because scarcity creates gravity. Here's the rule most people get backwards. Respect does not come from generosity. It comes from selectivity. When you say yes to everyone, your yes means nothing. When you say no without explanation, people lean in. Think about how the market responds to boundaries. High-status men don't negotiate endlessly. They present terms. They don't over-justify. They state conditions. They don't chase. They wait. And money moves toward them because confidence looks like certainty. The obedient man inside you hates this, because he was taught that politeness equals safety. He fears that saying no will make people angry, that creating distance will make him irrelevant. But the truth is harsher. Over-accessibility makes you forgettable. Ruthless men know something essential. Every boundary filters your environment. When you raise your price, you lose the wrong customers. When you limit your time, you attract the serious ones. When you stop explaining, you expose who actually respects you. Machiavelli warned that leaders who tried to be loved by everyone became weak in the moments that mattered most, because love without fear has no enforcement, and fear without respect collapses. But the balance, that's where authority lives. Let's talk about something practical. Most men sabotage their income by negotiating against themselves. They lower prices before being asked. They over-deliver to earn approval. They tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. Each one of these choices sends a signal. I don't believe in my own value, and the market always agrees with you. Ruthless men flip this dynamic. They let silence do the work. They present an offer and stop talking. They set a boundary and wait. If someone pushes back, they don't argue. They observe, because reaction reveals intent. This is where most people panic. Silence feels dangerous to the obedient man. He fills it with discounts, explanations, apologies. Ruthless men let silence stretch, and in that stretch, power shifts. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If people can pressure you into changing your terms, you don't have leverage. And without leverage, money drips slowly, if at all. Boundaries create leverage, and leverage attracts wealth. This is why ruthless men often seem hard to reach. It's not arrogance, it's filtration. They protect their time, energy, and focus like assets, because they are. In the next part, I'm going to show you how ruthless men control narrative and why perception matters more than effort when it comes to money and status. This is where strategy overtakes hard work, and once you see it, you'll never present yourself the same way again. People don't respond to reality. They respond to what they believe is happening. Most men think money follows effort. It doesn't. It follows perception. This is one of the most dangerous truths Machiavelli exposed, because once you understand it, you realize how often you've been invisible by choice. Ruthless men do not wait to be recognized. They frame themselves. They decide what they represent before anyone else gets the chance. And the world accepts that frame because humans are pattern-seeking machines. Here's the mistake obedient men make. They assume quality will speak for itself. So they stay quiet, they understate, they let others define them. And in that silence, someone louder takes the credit, not because he's better, but because he controlled the story. Machiavelli warned rulers that perception outweighs truth in the minds of the masses, not because truth is irrelevant, but because it's invisible until framed. Money behaves the same way. Investors, clients, and markets don't dig deeply. They read signals, and ruthless men design those signals deliberately. Think about how authority actually works. Authority is not granted by credentials. It's assumed by behavior. The man who speaks decisively is believed to know. The man who hesitates is suspected. And suspicion kills opportunity. This is why ruthless men simplify their message. They don't explain everything. They don't expose their doubts. They don't narrate their learning curve. They present clarity first. And clarity creates trust even when experience is still forming. The obedient man inside you resists this. He says, "But what if they find out I'm still learning?" They will. Everyone is. The difference is ruthless men let results catch up to the frame. Obedient men wait for perfection and never step into the light. Machiavelli understood something subtle. People follow symbols before substance. They believe in appearances long enough for reality to solidify underneath. This is not deception, it's timing. Here's where it becomes practical. If you present yourself as optional, you will be treated as optional. If you present yourself as scarce, attention sharpens. If you speak like a leader, people assign you responsibility, and responsibility brings money. Ruthless men curate what is visible. They show confidence, not chaos, direction, not debate, end results, not process. Because process is messy, outcomes are clean, and clean narratives move markets. This is why some men get opportunities they don't seem qualified for. They aren't chosen by merit. They are chosen by certainty. Certainty feels safer than hesitation even when it's imperfect. Here's the line that should stop you cold. If you don't define your value, someone else will. And they will price it lower. The obedient man waits to be discovered. The ruthless man announces arrival, not loudly, not arrogantly, but decisively. In the next part, I'm going to show you how ruthless men detach emotionally from outcomes, people, and opinions, and why that emotional distance is one of their greatest financial advantages. This is where most men collapse, because letting go of attachment feels like losing humanity. But it's actually how you gain freedom. The moment you stop needing approval, your income ceiling breaks. Most men are emotionally chained long before they are financially limited. They care too much about reactions, too much about opinions, too much about being misunderstood. And that Emotional attachment quietly taxes every decision they make. Ruthless men pay no such tax. Here's the difference nobody explains. Obedient men feel first, then decide. Ruthless men decide first, then feel later. That single reversal changes everything, because emotions distort timing, and timing is where money is made or lost. Think about how many decisions you've delayed because you didn't want to disappoint someone, a partner, a friend, a boss, an audience. Each delay felt reasonable, but together they built a life of compromise. And compromise is expensive. Ruthless men understand a brutal truth. If someone benefits from your hesitation, they will encourage it. They'll call you responsible, grounded, realistic, but what they really mean is controllable. This is why emotional detachment looks cold from the outside, because most people are deeply invested in keeping you predictable. When you detach, you become unstable to them, and instability threatens comfort. Ruthless men do not confuse empathy with obligation. They can understand someone's feelings without allowing those feelings to dictate their actions. They don't argue, they don't justify, they don't explain endlessly, they decide. The obedient man inside you panics here. He says, "But won't people leave?" Yes, and that's the point. Because not everyone deserves proximity to your ambition. Some people only tolerate you, as long as you don't outgrow them. Here's the harsh realization that changes everything. Every level of success requires a new level of emotional independence. You cannot carry old attachments into new territory. They will weigh you down. Ruthless men detach from outcomes, too. They don't fall in love with a single deal, a single idea, a single plan. If something fails, they pivot without identity collapse. Failure hurts them physically, but not personally. That distinction saves years. Obedient men take losses as verdicts. I'm not good at this. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe I should stop. Ruthless men take losses as data. What broke? What shifted? What do I adjust? And then they move again. Faster. This emotional distance creates a terrifying advantage. They don't freeze under pressure. They don't spiral under criticism. They don't beg under rejection, which means they stay in the game longer than anyone else. And time in the game is where wealth compounds. Let me say this cleanly. If your self-worth is tied to outcomes, you will sabotage momentum the moment things get uncomfortable. Ruthless men separate identity from results. They play to win, but they don't need to win today. That patience without attachment is lethal. This is why they look calm when others are panicking, why they negotiate better, why they walk away faster, why they sleep while others spiral. They are not numb. They are unentangled. In the next part, I'm going to reveal how ruthless men choose their battles, and why winning less often actually makes them richer. This is where strategy replaces emotion completely. And once you understand this, you'll stop wasting energy on fights that keep you poor. Ruthless men don't fight every battle. They fight the right ones. Most men burn their energy in the wrong arenas. They argue online. They defend themselves to people who don't matter. They fight to be right instead of fighting to win. And then they're exhausted with nothing to show for it. Ruthless men conserve force. Machiavelli observed that weak leaders react to every provocation. Strong ones choose when to respond. Why? Because reaction hands control to your opponent, and control is currency. Here's the difference in thinking. Obedient men ask, "Is this fair?" Ruthless men ask, "Is this useful?" Fairness is emotional. Usefulness is strategic. And money listens to strategy. Think about how often you've been pulled into unnecessary conflict. a disrespectful comment, a bad review, a challenge to your authority. Your instinct was to correct, to explain, to defend. Each time you did, you elevated the conflict, and elevation gives importance. Ruthless men do something colder. They assess. Is this person powerful? Does this situation affect position? Will engagement create leverage? If the answer is no, they do nothing. And nothing is often the most aggressive move available. Silence frustrates. Silence destabilizes. Silence starves opponents of relevance. This is why weak men hate it and ruthless men master it. Machiavelli warned that fighting small enemies publicly only makes them appear larger. But when you choose your battles carefully, every engagement increases your authority. You are seen as deliberate, measured, unmovable, and money trusts those traits. Here's the principle most people never learn. Not every injustice deserves your response. Some deserve your absence, because presence validates. Absence diminishes. Ruthless men also understand when to strike decisively. When they do engage, they do not half commit. They finish the confrontation. They close the loop. They remove the threat. Because unresolved conflict leaks energy, and leaked energy slows momentum. This is why ruthless men appear lucky. They aren't fighting everywhere. They are focused, and focus multiplies force. The obedient man inside you struggles here. He wants to correct every misunderstanding, defend every slight, prove every doubt wrong. But that urge reveals insecurity, and insecurity invites challenge. Let this sink in. If you have to explain your power, you don't have it. Power is felt, not argued. Ruthless men let results speak. They outgrow critics instead of silencing them. They rise above disputes instead of winning them. And while others are busy proving points, they are accumulating leverage. This selective aggression creates space, space to build, space to think, space to move quietly, and quiet movement is dangerous to competitors. In the next part, I'm going to show you the final internal shift, the moment where men stop chasing money and money starts chasing them. This is the paradox Machiavelli hinted at, but most never understand. And once you see it, the game changes permanently. The moment you stop chasing money, it starts circling you. Most men spend their lives pursuing wealth like prey. They chase opportunities. They beg for attention. They hunt validation. And the harder they chase, the faster money runs. Ruthless men reverse the polarity. They become the terrain money moves through. Here's the paradox Machiavelli hinted at, but never stated directly. Power attracts resources. Resources do not create power. If you chase money without authority, you look desperate. If you build authority first, money comes looking for alignment. Think about this carefully. Money is risk-averse. It looks for certainty, direction, command. It flows toward men who appear to control outcomes, not men who hope for them. This is why ruthless men stop talking about money. They talk about standards, structure, rules. They don't ask, how much can I make? They ask, what must be true for others to need me? That shift changes everything. Obedient men try to be wanted. Ruthless men become necessary. And necessity removes negotiation. Machiavelli understood that true power is invisible. The most dangerous men don't chase crowns. They influence who wears them. They don't compete loudly. They position quietly. And when others realize what's happening, it's already too late. Here's where your old instincts betray you. You were taught to signal effort, to show struggle, to appear humble. But humility without leverage reads as weakness. Ruthless men signal control. even when they are still building it, especially then. This doesn't mean arrogance. It means composure. They speak slowly. They decide cleanly. They move without spectacle. And that calm creates gravity. People lean in. Opportunities arrive. Money senses stability. The obedient man inside you wants to ask, but what if I'm not ready yet? That question reveals everything, because readiness is not a requirement. Position is. Ruthless men position themselves early and grow into the role. Obedient men wait to feel ready and miss the moment. This is why money seems to stick to certain men. Once authority is established, every win compounds. Every introduction carries weight. Every move signals momentum, and momentum attracts capital like heat attracts motion. Here's the hardest truth to accept. If money isn't responding to you, it's not because you're unworthy, it's because you're unpositioned. And positioning is a choice. Ruthless men choose to be seen as decision makers. They don't outsource responsibility. They don't hide behind systems. They don't wait for permission. They act as if outcomes are their burden. And the world agrees. Once you stop chasing money, you gain something more valuable: selectivity. You choose deals. You reject distractions. You shape environments. And when you can say no comfortably, yes becomes expensive. This is the quiet moment where the game flips, where you realize wealth was never about effort alone. It was about becoming the kind of man that money needs to sit near. In the final part, I'm going to tie everything together and show you the single irreversible decision that separates men who hear this message from men who actually transform. This is where the old identity dies completely, and there is no return after this. There is one decision you make once and never recover from. Everything you've heard until now leads to a single moment, not a tactic, not a habit, not a mindset, a line you cross quietly while everyone else is asleep. And once you cross it, the old version of you cannot follow. That decision is this: you stop negotiating with your former self. No more internal debates, no more emotional appeals, no more just this once. You choose outcomes over comfort permanently. Most men flirt with ruthlessness. They adopt it when things feel urgent. They abandon it when life feels stable. That's why nothing changes. Ruthlessness only works when it becomes identity, not effort. Machiavelli understood this with chilling precision. He didn't teach people how to act ruthless. He taught them how to become unavoidable. And that requires one irreversible shift. You stop asking if a move feels right and start asking if it moves the needle. This is the death of the obedient man. Not dramatically, not publicly, quietly, in the moment you choose to disappoint someone instead of betraying your future. In the moment you raise the price and accept whoever leaves. In the moment you walk away without explaining yourself. Here's the truth nobody prepares you for. When you make this decision, you will feel alone. Not because you are wrong, but because most people never choose authority over acceptance. They stay familiar. You become distant. They stay liked. You become respected, and the gap widens. This is where money finally responds, because money trusts consistency. It senses when a man no longer bends to pressure, guilt, or fear, when his standards are stable, when his decisions are final. That stability feels safe to capital, and capital moves toward safety. You'll notice changes first in reactions. People hesitate before questioning you. Negotiations shorten. Opportunities come pre-validated, not because you became aggressive, but because you became anchored. This is the final Machiavellian truth. Power does not arrive with permission. It arrives when resistance stops working on you. when you no longer flinch, no longer over-explain, no longer soften decisions to be palatable. You will not announce this transformation. There will be no applause, no ceremony, just a quiet series of choices made without witnesses. And months later, people will call it luck. But you'll know the truth. You didn't become ruthless overnight. You simply stopped obeying the version of yourself that kept you small. And once that obedience dies, money has nowhere else to go. The question is no longer whether this works. History already answered that. The question is whether you're willing to let the old identity dissolve without guarantees. Because once you choose ruthlessness with precision, there is no return to comfort, only momentum.